Good morning and welcome to another edition of Account-Based Friday. And we got a great one today. Esther Flammer coming out of Colorado. And Esther, Megan, and I all go back many, many years. Really excited to have her, the CMO of Reich. And what a terrific story. In fact, we'll get into more of Esther and her background. But I always thought of you, Esther, as a positive person to be around. I'm so excited to have you join in today. And each week we start off with a poll. This week's poll was inspired by some banter that I found in the sales channel where they were debating about the role of SDRs and events. And events are coming back now in 2023. Of course, everybody is stretched right now. So, but I was surprised in this banter that there was some real strong opinions around where SDRs play or don't play as part of the event strategy. Now, for me as a marketer, I'm like, oh, they should naturally play in the event strategy because it would be great to work on their message and they're another pair of hands. But I don't know, Megan, what was your point of view when you saw this poll?
Yeah, well, I was one of the people who answered no SDRs ever. And although I have a tremendous amount of respect for the SDR role and understand the part it can play, and by the way, it can help with event recruiting and event follow-up and some other really good things. But my observation is that especially if you've got an executive audience at an event, so the people coming to the booth are senior, they want somebody who can answer their questions and be their peer. So one of the things I observed was, especially with the Serious Decisions events, we did get a lot of CMOs and others attending those events. So the companies that brought their executives and staffed their booth with their CEO, their CMO, their head of strategy, their head of product, or their really experienced people to do demos, like really great subject matter experts, they got more out of it because they were able to have conversations that moved the ball forward, as opposed to, oh, let me set up an intro for you. No, the intro happened and they were actually into the sales cycle, especially if it was somebody who came out of a session and was like, hey, I just saw somebody, talk about a great case study of using your application or your platform or whatever it is. And you're talking to the, head of product development about it, not a more junior person who's not going to be able to take that conversation to the next step. So my suggestion is you stand out if you bring more senior people to your events, and you progress your sales cycles faster if you do that. My point of view.
See, and
obviously I was not the popular one.
Megan, yeah, that's interesting because I would actually have said the opposite. I totally get what you're saying in terms of executive level, and I think that makes sense. And I think as I think back at some of the trade shows that we've run and the events, it typically isn't to the executive level, and so we've actually had a ton of success in sending SDRs. We actually just at Reich consolidated our SDR org into marketing, and I'm a huge proponent of that. I've seen it work both ways, obviously in sales or marketing. But for me, they are so hungry and they're on the front lines. And we utilize trade shows as kind of an incentive for high performers to get out and get customer facing and get prospect facing face-to-face at an event and continue to hone their pitch, versus a lot of our, maybe more senior reps. They don't really want to attend an event because it's not in their territory. And so they're not really incentivized to go and build pipeline and do lead generation when they could be closing their deals in their specific territory. So anyway, we've seen a little bit of the opposite in terms of some of the success of sending our SDRs, and then trying to get them to actually continue their skill development, as well as, just the passion and energy that they bring to being, lead generators at the booth and starting to demo and those kinds of things.
It's all about your audience, right? If I think about the events that we run at IT Novarica, it's for senior level people. It's CIOs, CTOs, heads of product, heads of strategy, that kind of role. And those people need a different kind of a conversation, I think. But if like, to your point, your audience is at a different point in the sales cycle, at a different point in what knowledge they want to gain or the interaction they want to have at that event, by all means, bring the right person for the job. And it sounds like you do.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's all about your audience. At Reich, we're targeting, project managers, we're targeting creative producers, marketing managers, those kinds of people where, again, an SDR, I think, could have that conversation, and again, have seen the success there.
Well,
Yeah,
and in
one
that
thing,
case, an executive, might be actually awkward for somebody in that role to talk to. That might be too much,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you both bring up great points of view. And by the way, for those that are joining on, and I see several people that are online right now, if you have questions, you can drop them in chat and we pull them up. I forgot to mention that as part of the intro. And also just another, I think both your points of view are very unique. Another point of view that I saw on the sales side was they were concerned about the maturity of the SDR and sending them to these events and being as polished and professional. And then I also heard this was from a pure sales perspective, and the three of us are marketers, lifelong marketers. So, we probably wouldn't think in terms of the way that the salesperson was saying. And to Esther's point, the other point was, the senior, unless it's in the territory, a senior SDR definitely did not have the interest. So the sales team, and interestingly enough, when I looked at the votes, the salespeople that voted were on the no SDRs ever staff booth. They were like purists, right? We just want to be focused on our time, our energy. That's a marketing event. Let marketing go handle. It was kind of the vibe that I got. But yeah, a very interesting poll. And I guess with that, Esther, you're probably seeing, like most companies right now, some challenging times, in terms of acquisition and pressure for getting revenue and reducing costs. But I'm curious, like what are you seeing right now in terms of like doing more with less or that trend internally?
Yeah, I know each of us talk with marketers all the time, and CMOs across every industry, and across every size of organization. And I think we continue to hear the same trends from everyone, that there is an increasing intensity and pressure going into 2023. And marketers have been used to this for some time. I mean, even if you think about just the last, 4 years of having to adapt and innovate, and even beyond that, right, of constant innovation and constant experimentation and constant finding and tracking ROI and the best channels to get in front of buyers as buyers' needs change and buyer behavior changes. But this year, I think the pressure is even more intense for most marketers out there, and largely just because, we're going into a different macroeconomic environment. There is absolutely a pullback from companies, again, at every single stage and every single size and industry of we need to do more with less, both from a budget standpoint. How do we reduce costs while maintaining volume and quality and, of leads and pipeline? How do we reduce resources and try and consolidate either tech or people or teams to, again, try and get to better levels of productivity? And some of the productivity losses that we've seen in kind of navigating in a hybrid world over the last couple of years. There's a lot, right? Plus all of, obviously, cookieless tracking, AI, right? All of the continued innovations and changing landscape. So it's just, I hear from everyone just this constant need of how do we continue to overperform? How do we continue to overachieve on targets? How do we continue to grow our company while also pulling back in places where it's going to be minimal risk to our business? Are you guys hearing the same thing?
Oh, 100%. That's the story that's out there. And it's actually kind of it's a good exercise to go through, because I think when you've got endless amounts of money, yes, you can experiment with things, but sometimes you also end up not cutting things off that aren't working as quickly. But Esther and John, since we all come from marketing operations background and sort of the idea of data-driven decision-making, Esther, I'm curious to know, what kinds of data do you rely on to figure out where you don't have, like if you cut something, it's not going to have an impact? I feel like everyone can have an opinion about what you should or shouldn't cut, but the data is really going to be your best friend in making those smart choices and defending those choices too. I'm curious to know what kinds of reporting or data you rely on to make those choices.
Yeah, and we're a hugely analytical and data-driven company. You have to be as a marketer and as an organization, honestly, to be able to make smart decisions. For us, we look at lots of different facets and lots of different kind of cross analyses of all of the different types of data. But for us, we do look at, kind of funnel stage or buyer's journey stage of top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, and then the mix of channels and what's performing across each of those kind of journey phases, and how do those interact and integrate and influence essentially getting to predictable pipeline. We also are looking at specific areas of targeting for us, which is, we have the ability to drive a lot of demand, really high volume of trials for our business, for people who are looking for project or work management software. And for us, it's more of, again, that quality component, which is, what is our sweet spot? We actually do very well in mid-market and enterprise, largely because we have a really not complex, but actually we're more built for complex use cases and some of the needs of some larger organizations. And so as we're going and targeting and ensuring that we're continuing to drive volumes of trials to our sales reps and also leads and demos, but making sure that they really do fit into our core ICPs, our core target segments. And so we're also managing kind of all of those components, not just in terms of channel mix and optimization, but also in terms of how much of the quality audiences are we actually targeting and how much are we getting and converting.
You got a heck of a lot of segments there, and a pretty big, we were talking before, I think you said your org was like 130-ish people. So you're navigating a lot of dynamics there, different segments, probably different people that are focused on those segments. Are you seeing any bright spots either globally or in any of those segments that are maybe performing stronger than others? Like, is enterprise doing better than mid-market, or is Europe doing better than the US? Or is it all kind of across the board, like, hey, do more with less, and everything's challenging across the board?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, kind of starting from the highest level on down, going through the funnel stages of top of funnel, middle of funnel, bottom of funnel, again, as we're having to make decisions. And typically this is what you see a lot of marketers having to do as you're making those tough decisions on where do you spend. Typically, what you see is that pullback in terms of top of funnel and brand awareness, because it just doesn't have that direct correlation or immediate correlation to ROI. And so we've shifted much more down funnel to really focus on how do we get to the most buyer ready leads so that we can ensure that we have the conversion that we'd want to see to pipeline and then to revenue. So that's kind of, first cut of what are some of those channels that we're not seeing perform or that are maybe a little bit too long tail in terms of our ability to generate immediate revenue, while not obviously turning it completely off to risk kind of that long-term component, but just really shifting. Then when you're looking at channel mix, really looking into the performance of each channel and the multi-touch attribution around, your fully integrated campaigns, and ensuring you have a really clear understanding of true ROI, of what is producing, and not just what is producing revenue, but for us, it's actually looking at, and we actually have built out kind of a machine learning scoring algorithm kind of by our own data science team in Reich, which can predict, because we have such high lead volume and trial volume, it can predict expected lifetime value, which, really does skew more towards those larger companies because there's that net retention and that ability to be able to expand within those larger size companies. And so utilizing that to feed into not only our algorithms, how do we target, but also to make decisions on which channels are actually producing some of those, higher quality leads and pipeline that would potentially get us better overall lifetime value, not just kind of immediate revenue, and then maybe they churn and burn, after a year. So those are all of the different factors that we're actually looking at, which there's so much complexity into that, but it really is important to have a really good understanding of what's working for your specific business, where do you want to target, and how do you invest your money in the right places to be able to see that growth.
Yeah, I love that. You definitely have a data advantage there. And I love that you've got a data science team and you're doing all this great predictive work. That's so exciting. And predicting a lifetime revenue, I think, is something I don't hear as much as I wish I did, because I think it's super important to think about that long game in any recurring revenue business. So super exciting you're doing that. I was interested, you mentioned earlier in our conversation, you've got the SDR team now reporting into marketing, which I think is great. I would love for you to share a little bit more about their role and kind of how they fit into the prioritization of channels and follow-up and tactics. Like, sort of what do you have them focused on right now?
Yeah, that was a more recent change. And again, I've seen this work in both ways, right? Both reporting into sales or reporting into marketing. I personally like to have SDRs in marketing, and largely because, again, there's pros and cons to both. To me, it is a great career stepping, kind of career pathing kind of bench to get into sales. Absolutely. And so I partner very, very closely to make sure that we have, the appropriate sales skills and development and career pathing to be able to provide that level of honestly, there's some of the highest performers that we then push into our sales organization and even to the rest of the organization. They become SEs, they become AMs. The reason why I love actually having them in marketing is because we look at it a couple of ways. One is from an inbound standpoint. And again, marketing is constantly analyzing and innovating and forecasting and predicting how much leads, what's the quality, in which segments, in which regions and countries can we produce. And that should go hand in hand with our SDR team so that we can really monitor and forecast, here's where we're going to have more leads, here's where the SDRs need to make sure that they're following up appropriately, that they have a good understanding of where are they coming from and how do they follow up appropriately to maximize that conversion rate, again, to get to predictable pipeline. On the flip side, from an outbound standpoint, I love having them really in a kind of a pod mentality, partnering with our ABM, our field marketers, in addition to our sales reps, and really having kind of a territory-based approach for target accounts. And again, it really should be that ABM marketer that is really going hand in hand, especially with that SDR, on what are the cadences, what are the list of accounts, the profiles, how do we continue to test and optimize and iterate as a team on kind of what's working, what's not, how do we get in front of these prospects to, again, increase that conversion and to maximize predictable pipeline. So those are just some of the things that we're really focused on with the SDR organization.
That's amazing. As you're talking about, it's almost like your account-based motion and that coordination seems like it's pretty tight because of the conversation. I'm curious, like your conversation with your head of sales or maybe one level below you, of how frequently are you guys collaborating or communicating on your target accounts and calibrating? Because I can imagine, especially with the shift in the economy, every shift requires a lot more communication. So you're probably changing a lot, would be my guess. But how's that dialogue going internally?
Yeah, and we all know, sales and marketing alignment is absolutely critical. And so we do have constant conversations, right, weekly, at the very minimum, across sales leadership, marketing leadership, kind of the SDR leadership, ensuring that we have, a really transparent line of communication, especially kind of on that outbound side. And in the spirit of that do more with less component, we're seeing obviously a shift across lots of companies and marketers in terms of what I've heard of shifting from really, decreasing that cost of acquisition, which we know continues to get higher and higher. And as you're trying to shift spend, actually focusing more on that customer base, because then you don't have necessarily that cost of acquisition. You already have kind of a foot in the door, and there's a lot of room for expansion. And we've done the same thing, especially with our ABM focus, which is really shifting it more towards our customer base, because there's a huge amount of white space in a lot of these large size companies. And how do we actually start to utilize the SDRs along with the sales, because it can't be siloed. You can't have, two separate sales reps essentially working. I guess you could divide and conquer accounts. And it does happen, especially on kind of the smaller segments where we do a little bit of a division. There's a lot of accounts to go after. And so we divide and conquer between the sales reps, but there has to be really constant communication as an SDR is prospecting into an account that technically that sales rep owns. But there's also the high and low kind of prospecting of we're targeting the same account. Here are the types of contacts that an SDR is going to go after. And then to our point earlier, earlier that Meg brought up of SDRs can't really have those executive level conversations, but we have the SDRs actually, calling down low, director level below, trying to find the people who have the pain and the people who are going to be the biggest champions of our solution, and then having the sales rep call high and get to a VP level or above, and then utilize, a really aligned approach to be able to truly penetrate that account.
Yeah, I love that. I think that's a really, really smart use of resources, especially in large, complex accounts. I'm interested to know, I feel like the danger there would be, the left hand not knowing what the right hand's doing, to use that old phrase. How are you using technology to help everybody? I presume folks are remote. How are you using technology to help everyone stay informed of the actions that are happening within a shared account?
Yeah, and this is becoming, I think, increasingly harder and harder as we are continuing to navigate a very, very hybrid environment. We're absolutely, probably more than half of my team is fully remote, and then half of the team are in offices. And we have all been a part of that, where it's really hard because you really are, even if you're in an office, you're in back-to-back Zoom calls because a lot of the people that you're working with are still in different places around the world. And you lose a lot of insight and visibility into what's happening. Reich, we actually just did a research study this last year around dark matter of work, which is basically all of the unknown, invisible work that just drops in terms of delayed projects or just tasks that get forgotten about, or you leave a call and no one takes notes, and so there are no action items, so you have to do another call, or even all the Slacks that come through of, hey, can you get this done? And so that's actually what our platform does. It is a work management solution to provide a lot of that visibility into all of the different facets. As you have an SDR team working with an SAE, as working with a marketer, we put all of that into kind of one place. We call it our single source of truth. And that's really great for us because, again, it gets everyone collaborating in real time, really getting visibility across what's happening across an org or across an account as you're prospecting into it. We also use a lot of kind of ABM technology, SDR technology, utilizing the automation of cadences, intent data. We like our tech, but it also makes things a lot easier in so many ways.
That's fantastic, and I could understand why you like your tech. You sound like you're in the tech world. You're really having to use all those different tools to kind of prospect effectively, and especially as you're focused on that bottom of the funnel, that those signals become very, very relevant and very important to make sure things are going to close. Maybe just kind of continuing down on that funnel, are you finding much of your time being focused on the upsell, cross-sell on the other side of the funnel of, the existing customers or retention right now? Or is the charter for marketing like just accelerate what we've got in pipe and get that done as your number one priority right now?
No, we're looking at new pipeline generation. Really, that is where our marketing team is focused. So not just on new business, which, like I said, we source almost 100%, I think pretty much 100% of all new business, largely through, digital channels to get to those trials that we then feed to sales. It's very much a land and expand type of motion. But then on the customer expansion side, again, our goal really is to focus on new pipeline generation within those existing accounts. And so how are we looking at white space? What are we looking at in terms of, we have kind of next best product type of mentality of, we have you on this specific use case, let's get you to another use case, or let's take a look at a different team within your organization, or we have the full marketing team in an organization. We know that there's a lot of pathways and alignment and work that happens between marketing and sales, or marketing and IT, and marketing and HR. What does that look like to start to add on other teams and do a little bit of that cross-sell across teams to get to larger enterprise-wide expansion, which again is really kind of what our platform is built for, is kind of all of those different work streams, really bringing that together into one platform. So we're really focused on not necessarily pipeline acceleration. We absolutely do partner with sales on that, but really for us, it's about pipeline generation.
Yeah, it's nice to have that focus. I feel like it makes a lot of difference. A question for you on, given that you are being focused, you are using technology to make sure that you're doing the right things at the right time. Curious to know what happens when somebody comes in with an idea or a suggestion or a request that you don't think fits in with your goals in your portfolio. How do you handle those conversations? What are some tips for marketers who have to say no in the do more with less environment?
Yeah. And, I tend to joke that's not something that's new for marketers. I think we've always had to be good partners while being able to respectfully say no, because as we know, we're the ones who are constantly asked for everything. Why aren't you optimizing the website? What about brand? I need a new field event. We need more leads. It is a constant, a constant kind of request funnel. While we want to be good partners, absolutely. And for me, I want to hear the ideas that sales is bringing to the table or what the needs are across the organization. And for me, it's always a matter of how do we, is there a business case? Is there a business justification? Is there, what do we believe is going to be kind of the outcome of us investing in this kind of the cost benefit analysis in a sense of, it will take this much effort, but we believe that we can get X result and X amount of ROI. And then it is a matter of, potential reprioritization. And I don't like to do that constantly. Sometimes it is necessary. So I do think that you need to kind of take a look at the requests that are coming in, why they're coming in, and then really kind of evaluating. And then also letting them know, right? Hey, if we do this request, we're not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, and almost even giving it to them to make that decision of, we have 5 things that we're working on. If you want us to add something, we're not just going to add it to our plate. Something else will have to drop. And here's the risk of that. And making sure that people have a clear understanding of kind of what is it that marketing is focused on? Because I think that's a question sometimes in an organization, like, what is marketing doing? So I think that is a lot of the alignment and the partnership conversations and that transparency that needs to happen, but also really bringing in that data-driven kind of approach to basically say, here's the areas where we are investing and here's what we're getting out of it. If you have a better idea or a new, a channel that you think might work better, just know that we're not going to be able to do that. This is going to be the risk to the business or to pipeline or leads or whatnot. But constantly having that conversation and being able to have a trusted relationship so you don't feel like you're always the bad guy saying, no, we don't have budget for that. No, it's a bad idea. But being able to, create that trusted partnership and being able to say, look, we've done this. Here's what we got. Or you asked for this last time. We didn't get anything. So we're unfortunately not able to invest in that again.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's fantastic. And gosh, I'm taking away so much in today's conversation. I just noticed that we're hitting the bottom of the hour and want to be sensitive to your time, Esther, as I'm sure you got a zillion dragons you're slaying there, but doing more with less and the focus, the maniacal focus of being data driven and that pipeline generation is what I'm kind of taking away. But any closing thoughts from you on today's conversation?
No, I mean, we covered a lot. I think, again, understanding you're not alone. I think everyone is feeling the pressure. And sometimes it is having to make really just difficult decisions and taking some risks. But that constant bottom line focus of what's going to produce ROI, what's going to accelerate our time to market, and then creating layers of focus so that you can actually execute well. I mean, that's kind of where it is. But again, I think, the struggle is real, but we're all in it together. But yeah, happy to share my thoughts and my experience with you guys.
Well, we're delighted you joined us. It's so great to see you and glad to reconnect after a while. And thank you. Great suggestions and advice and things to aspire to for people listening today. So thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a pleasure.
Thank you, Esther. And you are a beacon of positive light, as always. I remember you from 10 years ago to today. You're still that same person. So keep up the positivity. And I guess next week, Megan, we've got your guest, Jackie, who I think is joining us.
Yes, indeed. Jackie is a self-proclaimed, but I agree, Salesforce magician and RevOps expert. So we're going to be talking about all things revenue operations and how to really make that function a critical component of your demand engine.
Excellent.
And thank you for joining us, Kelly.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much.